Okay, we're going to get started. I assume that everybody's got a laptop and can get onto the PHP.com site. If anybody's not there, having trouble, let me know. We'll start with PHP.com and push the PHP101 class. And then we have the lesson material, which will bring you into today's lesson file, which is the lesson 0 up on GitHub, and then the sign up for class button, which we'll be utilizing here in just a few minutes as well. Let me switch my screen over. Excuse me. Okay, whoa. So, how many of you guys have been out to a PHP101 before? Ever been to a PHP? I'm sorry, not PHP101. PHP meetup at all. You've been to a PHP meetup. Okay. So those of you that are new, basically the PHP meetup itself was started on meetup.com like 3 years ago, I think, and it was this last summer. I got frustrated with lack of activity. Basically, the guy who started it had moved out of town, offered to take it over for him, started some meetings, and we've been realizing that one of the things that has been missing is the educational support for somebody that maybe is not as familiar with PHP. We get a lot of people coming out to the meetings who know PHP or talking about high-level stuff, and then we also have quite a number of people coming out to the meetings that are really new to PHP and don't have some of the basic understanding of what it all means and how do you work it. And or maybe they have the ability to do a basic website, but they really want to learn more. So it occurred to me that one of the things we needed to do for the PHP meetup was start a training class. So we have an opportunity to get together, do some educational time, go over the starting with the basics. So I apologize today if you already know HTML and CSS and GitHub. Well, that's what we're talking about today. It may not be quite as interesting to you, but keep along. We'll eventually get to some more challenging stuff. So, plan for this series of classes is really to start with the ground up, start with the basics, and get to the point where we can actually build some pretty high-level websites, MySQL interaction, some min-level stuff, even the kind of things that you would need to do, need to be able to do to have a job doing something with PHP. If you'll love development or actually more nitty-gritty working with internals of the system. A little bit about me. My name is Scott Friedentrunk. I'm 30 years been programming since age 12 at New York City. And first never saw me after that. I had my head down to here after that. But I've been programming one language or other for all that time. Mostly C, C++ has been my specialty, embedded microcontrollers, process control systems, real time. Also now telephony, I've gotten into a lot as well. The last 4 years I've been utilizing almost exclusively PHP for development. We're talking about everything from web interface to configuring IP phones to programming switches, to managing infrastructure. So there's a whole lot of power in PHP. It's such a powerful language you can actually build an entire program that you would have had to do in C before. PHP is now powerful enough that you can build it in PHP, and you can build it quite a bit easier and faster, honestly, in PHP if you got the basic stuff. So PHP is a great language to use, especially for somebody that's starting out from scratch because it is so highly integrated with web development. It's so easy to just say, well, I just want a little bit of code that does a cool thing on my website. And you've done some PHP programming, so you've got started with the basics. And it really can grow from there to the point that you're doing entire frameworks with MVC to build a web page completely programmatically. And it no longer looks like HTML. It's all hiding in libraries. It's more high-level structure. That's not necessarily the eventual goal of every PHP developer, but that's how far you can go from having basic, almost nothing more than HTML with a little bit of scripting to really programmatic, object-oriented, doing things a completely different way of getting basically the same results. Just how you do it. That flexibility in PHP is quite impressive. So this class came out of the Indianapolis PHP meetup. Wanting to learn, willing to help out those who want to learn. Trying to help out the developer community. I want to thank PHPW and the code editors provided this tea and the pizza. Be sure to thank them if you're back to and STGNet is my own company doing software for telephony. And I've just set up some web server here that we'll be doing that. Maybe we can do the class with. Do that in a minute. So we're doing this meetup here live together monthly, but we're going to do weekly lessons. Those are available online. Even if you can't quite get to them throughout the week, and you come back to the live meeting on 4th Saturday to catch on. That's okay, but obviously you'll learn PHP faster and understand it better, and more time is spent. This is the point where I'm telling you, if you really want to learn it, put as much time as you can into it. Things that you become an expert in, or things that you will spend a significant amount of time in. Another word is I'm not an expert on all things. I know a lot of stuff because I've been through it, have the experience. But just because this is the way I'm doing it doesn't mean that's absolutely the best way, or that somebody else does a completely different way of doing it. I prefer Linux systems, Red Hat based, Red Hat, official Red Hat. Actually, I use CentOS more than anything, which is a Red Hat, the free version of Red Hat. I actually run Fedora on my laptop only because the CentOS Wi-Fi driver didn't work, so I had to go to Fedora. That's the way that I do PHP. Other people may do a PHP in a web, in a Windows environment, or a Linux environment, and do it on Mac. It's just a programming language, but along with most programming languages, you get a lot of people saying, well, this is the true right way, the one true way to do this way. That's not necessarily what the most important thing is, especially when you're learning. When you're learning, the important thing is how can you make it work? Understanding the most the basic fundamentals of can we get this program to do what we want? That's the first thing. Understanding how to get to that point where code does what you want, and you get that desired output. That's step number one. Learning better ways of doing things as you continue to grow as a developer. That's great. There are always better ways of doing things. Even at my level of having been doing this for decades, I'm continually learning better and new ways of doing things, especially with PHP. So I'm no PHP expert, but I can at least answer your questions about solving any kind of problem you've got with PHP, getting to the bottom of it, because that's what I do day in, day out. Requirements for the class: if you got a computer and a web browser and you can browse to the internet, then you're ready to go. We've got everything else ready for you. And what we want to do first today is go to the php.com PHP101, hit your sign up for class development. And what this is going to do is we're going to create you, normally what you need to develop PHP, you normally need a LAMP stack. Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. Basically, it's the environment that PHP runs in, it's a web browser. I've got one online already working. And what you want to do is go ahead and create yourself an account. And the voucher, by the way, is PHP101. So, and that's just there as a human detector, so I don't have robots creating accounts on it. And apparently I crashed the website a little bit. I have trouble getting an account. There we go. This is what it should look like when you get your account. And we'll basically have your account name, .indiephp.com, and the /editor.php is important because that is your web-based tool for doing PHP editing. Now, of course, if you have your own LAMP stack, you have your own environment on your own laptop or whatever, feel free to use that instead. If you've got Git, you know how to work at command line and SSH in the shell, you're fine. If not, we're going to walk you through those steps today. And this account that we're creating here for you is yours for the creation of this class. It's in its own user protected environment, so you don't have to worry about somebody else stepping on your files. Obviously, you don't want to store private information in this because it is a publicly accessible web server. The point of this is to have an environment where you can go ahead and do development work in that environment. So if you follow your link, you will get to a page that looks like this. And you can actually bring up, if you pull down and select editor and push edit, you can actually bring up the editor code in the editor. So you can actually see the PHP code that you're actually running on. Now don't modify this or you'll break your access. Obviously I can fix that for you, but where did I go? There it is. But once you get, if everybody can get up to the point where they've got their editor tool up and running on an account, and then let me know when we all get to that point. This is your account to continue to use throughout the class. And I expect to be doing this throughout most of this year. There's that much material, and even when we get through a lot of the PHP basics, there's a lot of other information we can get into. There's a whole myriad of frameworks that we can get into, specific ones that people have expressed interest in. So there's as we start to run out of material, get everybody up to the level where you know PHP and really streaming on that. We can dig into another subject. So we can be doing this for quite some time. These accounts are for you to continue to use as long as you'd like. The email address is simply in case I need to alert somebody about something, or not going to send the emails out to people to know about that. Just in case of a problem. Any problems? Anybody else? We want to make everybody set their account up. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and load the next page. piece. Everybody see anybody not there yet? No, we're all good? All right. So just as an example of creating an actual file in this and using it, you can actually just go ahead and type in, you want to pull up a new file. So if you've gone to the other editor and push edit, and you've got that code up, you want to go back to the new file entry, push edit, which then loads, well, an empty file. You can then type in hello world, press save. It prompts you for a file name. We're going to do hello.php. If you're following along the instructions, you'll see that. Yeah. Oops. I've actually screwed it up. Try that again. New file. And save. And then you can actually run it, which will basically just output the same document for you. In PHP, of course, there's tags that say what's PHP code and what's plain HTML that pass along through. So if you just type some regular text into your document, you're just going to get it like that. So this is just the first step to say that you can then create your own new PHP file and run it. Everybody got that step? Anybody having trouble with following along that point? Check your clock. And so the purpose of this tool is to allow you to, with just a web browser, edit PHP files online from anywhere and be able to run it to experiment with PHP code. Everybody up to speed? Are they having trouble with getting to the point of saving a file and running it? And we do have to try out the pop-up button. All right, so moving right along, actually I'm going to skip slightly down. We're going to run a shell command real quick first. I'm going to skip around just slightly in the instructions. You'll notice next to edit button there's a shell button. And if you push that, what you're going to get is a shell prompt. Now here we're using Linux command line, such as ls instead of dir. Dir actually does work, either one of the functions. But in this environment, you are able to have full control, and we're able to run some other commands that we need to do later, such as Git, which is the software tracking system that we're going to be learning today. So at any point you can push the shell button and you'll be in this shell environment, and here you can actually rename the file. Like if I messed up the name on this one file, I can rename it, just like that. So mv is the command for renaming, by the way. Since I we didn't have a default of .php on the extension name, but I had some issues with that. And then if you go back to your editor and you refresh the editor, you will then see in the pull down that it's renamed as well as the files that are present in your directory. Sorry? You can leave that shell. You don't have to shut down. You don't have to shut down the shell window. You can flip back and forth. All right. So next thing we're going to, now that we've done some basic practice of creating a hello.php and running it. Obviously, we haven't actually written any PHP code yet, but we need to real quick go over Git and GitHub. The Git is a tool that's used for keeping track of your projects, also changes on your projects, and it also allows you to easily share information with other developers. So in a large corporate environment, for example, or even just a small team, and especially on the open internet doing open source projects, when you have a lot of programmers coming and going, working on the same bit of code, obviously, if programmer A grabs a copy of the code off the server, makes some changes, program to B, grabs the same copy of the code off the server, makes some different changes. Merging those two guys' code changes together can be a problem, so that you don't lose those changes. The easiest way of solving that problem is to use software that keeps track of the changes in small little quantities so it can see the difference. And even if we do run into a conflict, we know that this person changed this code this way and that person changed that way. And then both parties can see what the differences are and make the correct adjustments to merge that back together if it can't be done automatically. Git is the latest in a series of GIT, by the way, is how you spell Git. Is the latest in a series of software packages that solve that problem. SVN is the one that is the most common prior to Git, that Git kind of replaces. One of the interesting things about Git is that when you grab a copy from a server of code that you're going to work on, you're doing what's called a clone operation, you're making a copy of that. You then can pull down additional updates that other people have made to the server later on, or you can push up to the server changes that you've made. But the interesting thing about Git is that beyond the clone and the push and the pull commands, most of the rest of the commands in Git you're doing locally on your system. You can be unplugged from the internet. You can be on an airplane trip, and you can be making code changes, committing those changes, meaning recording that I made this change for this reason, and then moving on to something else. And later on, when you push that back up to the server, then that's information synchronized. And at that point, you can start to resolve any conflicts if there isn't. There are here in the lesson plan, and we'll get that downloaded here in your machines here in a second. There's a link to a good website from GitHub that's an introduction to Git that contains a whole lot of more information and details about the background of how it works. But for the basics, it's connect up to the server with the clone, pull, push, and then run your manipulations on your copy yourself with the other commands. There's also a quick reference of commands that you can use, and we'll actually go through a couple of those commands here today. GitHub is the other piece that is used a lot. GitHub is like the Facebook for developers. It uses Git. It is a repository server for Git. So projects that people have developed, a lot of stuff in PHP, for example, is up on Git. I want a solution for talking to a specific piece of telephony hardware. Somebody's already written a PHP library that does that. I can go git clone their project, pull it down, make some changes, actually kick some of the improvements back to them to say, hey, I fixed this bug here. All through using, and I found the project using Git. I just did a search on GitHub for the type of code I was looking for and found a very popular rated project. So GitHub is what you could call social coding. Let me actually do this as a, if you don't have a login, this is on GitHub already, this is what you would see. But it's also possible to reference a project directly, even if you're not logged into it. So our lesson plan, for example, right now is on GitHub. This is publicly available to anyone and everyone on the internet right now. And the lesson plan that I'm going through, this lessons.md file, is available to anybody on the internet right now through GitHub. So the hosting on GitHub is free. So it's free for public projects. You can pay if you need a project on GitHub that you don't want anybody else to see. If you're doing private work for a company, it's a nominal fee, I think $7 a month, to have a few projects that they don't share with the public. But for open source projects, this is one of the best solutions out there, the best options. Like I said, anybody can get a copy of a project that's in the public. You can also, if you create an account on GitHub, you can create your own repository, so you can start your own project. You can also make what's called a fork. A fork in Git terminology is a copy of a project that is in your directory under your account that's a clone of another one, so that you can work changes and save those back to GitHub but under your own account, so that you can track your particular version. In some cases, your version, if you've made improvements to some project above and beyond what the original developers did, your project might become more popular than theirs, and other people might start cloning and forking your project instead of the original. Usually, though, for a large project, there is some particular very popular posted project on GitHub for that software. The Facebook-like features of GitHub, you can do, you can star, which is kind of like liking a project or a person, a user account on GitHub, so you can keep better track of what that project, what's going on with that project, or what that person is writing, other projects he's working on. A timeline of history, so you can see what comments people have put on the project to say, hey, this works or this doesn't. Here's how you solve this problem. Also, if they've gotten a bug, they can flag that as an issue, say, hey, I got a problem with this, it's not working the way that I think it should. And then the developer can work with that, or you can actually submit a patch against that problem from your own repo, which is called a pull request. Basically, GitHub is the most convenient place to exchange source code with other developers. It's also a really good resource for if you want to see, well, how would I do this? If I wanted to build a web page, do things in a particular way, you need to solve a particular problem. Maybe somebody's already got code that does that, and you can hunt through on GitHub, find some examples that are in the public that people have done that, and actually look through all the code. And you can do that all from the web browser. So we're going to actually do a Git clone of the PHP101 project from for this class. We're actually going to do that here in our shell window. So if you go back to your shell window and type git clone and then github.com indie PHP. Now the caps on this is important. It's capital I and capital PHP. And then PHP101, and it's important that it's lowercase this time. So git clone https ://github.com/ the username, which in this case is indie.php, and the project name, the repository name, which is PHP101. And then press enter. And what you find now is that you have a new directory. If I look at the PHP101 directory, I see these files. I see, for example, that lesson 0 MD file, and I can actually look at it directly. I can even edit my copy of it. Basically, what we've done here is we've checked out a copy, or cloned a copy from the repository of, in this case, just text files, but it could be PHP code as well. And in fact, in future lessons, PHP code will be distributed this way for the lesson. And you can make a copy of that in your local directory, and then actually view it, examine it, modify it, run it yourself. So if I look at the more command, by the way, is the way to look at what's actually in that text file. And this, you can see, is the same information we can use through that same lesson. And that's the step we're on. We've done the git clone, HTTP. Actually, I did HTTPS, which both ways. And then I moored the file, as you can see here. And if you go back to your editor and you do a refresh on your editor, you will also find then that the PHP101, oops, all the .git stuff is in there. All right, I'll have to fix that and patch it. But you'll also find that the PHP101 files are present as well. So now I can also pull that subdirectory files up into the editor by selecting the file I want to press. So now you have both the shell method and the web browser method of viewing the file. And in this case, if I was to run this, it wouldn't really do anything because it's oh, that's it. I should be able to run PHP scripts out of that. I don't know why I didn't do that. We'll worry about that later. So, yeah. Yeah. Right, so the indiephp.com is actually running on, I should probably brought this up. The indiephp.com is running on a hosted server in the cloud. So that's the equivalent of like putting it up on Amazon. It's actually running on an output called chunk code. And all it is a Linux machine that's running CentOS, so it's the same environment I'm accustomed to working in anyway. Same environment I would run on a laptop. And it has all the same tools, and the only difference here is that this machine is virtual for one. It's multiple virtual machines running one physical machine on a data center to save money. It's also why it doesn't cost me hardly anything to run. It's like $20 a month for your own virtual server, and that gives you your own IP address that you can operate whatever web services you want on. So this is what's called, and this is, sorry, I didn't put this in the lesson plan either. This is what's called a LAMP stack. Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. LAMP is the terminology used to quickly describe what's really sort of a very complicated thing. You got the Linux operating system as opposed to running Windows or Mac. Although PHP and Apache run just fine on both Windows and Mac, so you can do it that way if you want to. Apache is the web server itself. That's the thing that's answering requests on port 80 from your web browser. So it's the server that's answering up pages when your web browser connects to the server. That's the program that's running on the server. So Apache is what's called a daemon. It's a server program that's sitting around waiting for requests and answering up with whatever it is you ask for when the request comes in. Everybody in the world that does anything on the internet does it this way, even if they don't use Apache. They do something very similar. It has to work the same way with PHP, but yes. Yeah, I would highly recommend using Chrome, only because the shell mechanism is actually a piece of code written by Google, so it works well in Chrome, but it might not work well in other browsers. I suspect it will work just fine in Safari as well as probably also Firefox, but it doesn't honestly surprise me that it would have trouble with IE. So the other parts of that, once you've got your operating system and your Apache answering up the web request, then you've got MySQL, which is itself a little server, but that's really only used for databases. We're not going to get to that for a few minutes. And then PHP. Normally, when you're hitting web pages that don't have any kind of content, you just have HTML files. So, blah blah.html, you pass out the file when they ask for it, and it's static content. It doesn't change. The advantage of PHP is I can make up the content as I go along. I can go look up information in databases. I can go read some files off the disk. I can go talk to some other server and get information and answer it up that way. So a lot of web services run PHP just because it makes it very easy to be dynamic. Facebook, for example, is a perfect example of a company that their whole operation starts out being PHP. All of Facebook was, and to a certain degree still is, running PHP, even though for efficiency purposes they created their own compiled version of PHP called Github, which is another subject we're not going to right now. But basically that's what we've got running here. So a LAMP stack is running on the indiephp.com website, and what the class sign-up account is doing for you is giving you your own little subdirectory that you can play in and not be a problem either to other stuff I've got on the server or anybody else in the class. You've got your own environment. And that way, even though all files are readable to everybody, they're only writable. So you need your password to like this. Correct. Yeah, you're sitting in your own unique directory. You're not seeing all that stuff above. In fact, if you were to go to the, I'm going to show. If you go to the shell and look back at directory, you're going to see all kinds of other domains and stuff that I've got running on this machine. And you can even look at other stuff in well, you can poke around in the machine. There's not a whole lot to see. But that's, so what we've got is a bunch of user accounts. Everyone has their own user account separate in Unix with different access, with different user IDs to keep the files separate. Because Apache needs it to be this way, everything's publicly readable so that it can web serve it. However, when PHP scripts are running in your directory, they're running as you, so that you can manipulate your files or somebody else missing. So it's just a shared environment. It's this particular LAMP stack, this particular Linux machine running Apache and PHP is a shared environment that's operating multiple domains and multiple users, so that we can all have a taste of what it really looks like to work in a real PHP environment. The only difference between doing it this way and getting building your own machine, a machine that you built yourself to do your own PHP, or running Apache and PHP on your own laptop, for example, is that in that environment you're control of everything, and here you're in your own little user group. But equivalent is, the results are the same. You have the same experience. You're running the same PHP. We're just taking advantage of what most web servers don't, which is the ability to run multiple users. Let's see, what was next on the agenda here? So we've gone through doing a clone. Now, let's speak about Markdown really, really super quick, just so we're not confused about what a .md file is. One of the things that you'll find about GitHub, they love Markdown. Markdown is an alternate version of a markup language. Just like HTML has all this angle bracket to mark up information about how to display this text in the web browser. Markdown is a simpler version that looks like a plain text file, but in fact, it actually is let's look at the raw version of this. It looks like a text file, but it gets formatted in a specific way that makes it look like a good HTML file. So each one of these lines with the dashes underneath it becomes a header line. So the line here that I have selected, editor practice, became a nice big header here in HTML, and the asterisks became the list of card item lists. So basically, what Markdown is it's a simple markup language, so you can work with it in plain text format, but it's very easily readable as well in an HTML format. There's a quick reference here in our lesson plan, which shows you examples of how to do this. When you create a repository in GitHub, they give you the option of creating the initial readme.md, which is where you give the description for what this project is. So if I pull up a random, I don't know if that's a random, but if I pull up a project on GitHub, the readme.md down here at the end has the description that you want to read to describe what that project is. And if I was to go to GitHub and hunt up some other project, like let's say Bootstrap, I would then find the Twitter Bootstrap project, and I'd scroll down here, and here's their readme.md. So the readme in caps, .md, markdown, is the standardized GitHub specific way. It's not a Git standard, it's a GitHub standard of describing the project to somebody that's just stumbled across your project and wants to understand, why would I be interested? Why would I want to read this? Why would I want to use this code? It gives you an opportunity to read through some information about it. And in fact, Bootstrap is a project that I love and will be making some use of here as we go along. So, let's see, I need to get back to track here. So that's what Markdown is. GitHub actually will read the MD and convert it to HTML for you. So it does the nice formatting. And if you're running the shell environment, you can actually do that yourself using the Canva tool, and it'll convert it to HTML. You might not have been able to see that, but that's, so this is the, in the editor, pandoc is a command line utility that's been installed in this Linux stack that allows you to convert a .md file into HTML. So I could actually create .0.html, and oops, go back to my editor, refresh, and lesson 0.html. Now I see it in HTML format, and if I run that, it doesn't work. That's the fix. But if I go and access it directly, so lesson 0.html, interesting. Oops. Oh. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so we'll need to learn some things about change models as we're going through this as well. And I'll definitely throw in a lesson for that as well. But basically what I've done here is just to converted the MD format into the HTML format and pulled it up off of the web server from web. So one thing that we need to go through just so that you can see it real quick is an example of a Git Pull. So I can do this in GitHub. I can actually do an edit without having to pull it down to my machine. I'm basically doing an edit online here. I'm just going to type an extra little bit of text in this. Say hello, and I'm going to commit this change, which is equivalent of doing a push. And I've updated that file. And what you'll find if you look at the PHP101 Lesson 0.md, it doesn't have that -hello after the date that I just wrote into that. That's because I made that change and uploaded it into GitHub. Actually, I uploaded it from GitHub into GitHub. But if I go to the PHP101 directory now, the CD means change directory to. When I change that, I'm now working in the PHP101 directory. PWD shows me which directory I'm in. So I'm now in my account /PHP101, and then the command I'm going to do is git pull, git space pull. And when I do the git pull, it's going to go talk to the place that I did the git clone from. It remembered where I got this directory from. It remembered that I got it from GitHub, and that it was the indie PHP/PHP101 path. It remembers that. And then when I do the git pull, it says, well, I'll go get an update for it. It talks to GitHub, it pulls down the changed information, and now it's updated lesson 0.md. I can see that it's made a change here. And if I look at that file again, now that line that I changed up on GitHub, or from some other machine, I could have been on an airplane when I got back down on the ground and did a git push. And then my changes were pushed into GitHub. And then later on you come by and do a git pull, and then you see the changes to that document. So this is how GitHub works. This is how code gets distributed between different developers, and even between developers and users to a certain degree. So if I'm installing a package, and I want to make sure I get the latest and greatest code, I'm going to go get it from GitHub, because that's where if the developer's using GitHub, of course, that's where the latest code can be. And then I can be sure to get the latest fix that he's put in. And then moving along to next step. So that was Markdown, pulling updates from Git. One of the things that we're going to do in this class, the entire class information and the entire lesson plans, the step-by-step what it is that we want to be learning together is all going to be on GitHub in the indie PHP PHP101. So at any point, if you log into your account or from your own laptop or however you want to do it, or even just accessing it via the GitHub web interface directly from their website, anytime that you want to go and get the latest, you can actually go in and do a Git Pull if you've done the Git clone before. You have to start with Git clone to initialize it, but after that, it's just Git Pull. If you do a Git Pull, you'll pull down the latest lesson files. And you can make changes to the local files, and those won't get updated unless we work out an account that you can update that through. You have to have a GitHub account and all that. But that's how you can pull down the next lesson plan. So every week, if you log into your account and do a Git Pull, you should see the next plan to work on, and the next lesson, and be able to go through that material. So that's the much longer than I wanted to spend on it. GitHub, and now we're going to take a little break, get some pizza and pop, and rest my voice. I've been talking way too much here. We'll get any questions answered, and then we're going to do a little bit of HTML. We can use a course that's already online. It's easy to go through. It's very good. We're going to practice doing that in your class account. Any questions? I know I've dumped a whole lot of information on really fast. Yeah. Correct. Yeah, we did. So pull and push touch the server. So they touch the repository server. Touch that. There are other commands that you can run, such as status, that don't touch the server. They're running off of your local machine. So even if I didn't have internet access, if I run git status, it tells me, oh, you haven't changed anything. You got nothing new here. But if I was to say create a file and then do git status, this hasn't talked to the server, but it's realized that, hey, you've got this file. Did you want to add that? It's actually offering to me that that's something that I see different on your machine than what was last synchronized with the repository server when you did the last Git pull. Git clone. Git clone initializes and pulls it. You make changes to your local copy or the server. So what happens is if you do changes to your local copy, and you do a Git pull, and there's no changes, it's no problem. If there's changes and it's only touching the files you haven't changed, it's still no problem. It'll update the files that were changed on the server you haven't touched. If, however, you've made changes to a file and somebody else has too, when you do that Git pull, it'll warn you. You'll stop and say, what is it? We need to resolve it. And there's several ways of resolving it. And one of them is you decide that I don't have my copy, remove my copy and repeat that. The other option is, I really need that. This is an important change. And you've also made a change. So I need to resolve this change. So I'll need to do and I'm blanking on the command. I'll need to do there's a tool for that. I don't use it all that often. Yeah, merge tool. That's it. That's what I'm thinking. Use a merge tool, which is a fairly involved massive complexity tool to allow you to look at your version and their version, the new version. You can manually fix that. And then once you've updated, once you've finished that, you commit your changes, and changes, and push that back up. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Because until you have a password, you can't actually push. So, for example, if I go clone and pull, you can do without a password. But if I'm in my PHP101 directory here and I do a git push, it's going to say, what do you think? You don't have access to it. 403 error. I don't have an authorization for it. And there's a way to fix that, which is first you have to have a GitHub account so it can authenticate. And the second thing you have to do is for the command line, you have to tell it to use your account. Once it knows to use your account, then it tries to use your authentication. There's also another way to call it, way more complicated than what we need to do for this. But that's how you do it. Hmm? Yes, yes, yes. The way it actually works, which is very interesting, GitHub stores chunks of data in what's called tokens. It stores that on your local directory in this .git directory. All this data down here. There's all these objects. All the information about the status of your project is actually written in a non-human readable format in those directories. And so you can actually, even while you're on a plane with no internet connection, you can actually switch completely your version of code that you're working on from one branch to another branch, and it completely changes out all your content. You know, you have to commit any changes you've done first, but then you can switch branches. Branches is a concept in Git that says that, well, I've got, you know, this branch of the code and this branch of the code, and we're trying two different developments, and eventually we'll merge that back together later on. But these are two separate paths, almost like two copies of the same project. They've started from the same point, but they diverged at one point. And then I can actually switch between those completely without an internet connection, because all that data, all those object data, is stored in the .git directory. And I can manipulate both copies, do everything I want, and then when I finally hit the ground again and connect up to the internet again, I can now do a git push and push changes for the entire project back up together. So it's possible to do that kind of manipulation of the project, even without the internet connection, because it's storing all that information locally on your copy. So the one thing you're guaranteed of with Git is that it's not going to lose track of what you've done. And as long as you play the synchronization game, where you're touching back to the same repository server, you're going to get synchronized up with everybody else as well. Now, what happens when you get too many people with their hand in the same pie, of course, is you now have, well, the official GitHub copy, your copy, and now which one are you going to maintain? You know, the same games can still happen with developers where two of them are fighting for you know, the same way, different ways to do the same thing. GitHub isn't going to solve that. It's not going to lose your code. Everything is checksum. Everything is MD5, and everything is thoroughly checked. Git was actually developed by Linus Torvalds himself, the developer of Linux, because he was so fed up with every other option out there. Because he was doing this massive quantity of manipulating code in Linux kernel and doing it offline a lot of times, and really getting frustrated with the difficulty of everything. So he built the ideal tool. Yes. I don't think we're going to create anything better than Git. Just because of how powerful and flexible it is. It can be a little bit daunting to learn. It's a little more difficult than SVN. It took me a little while learning to figure out how to do things. But you know, if you've used any kind of change management before, you know, Git isn't all that hugely different, other than this concept of being so disconnected, except for the pulls and pushes. Any other questions? Go for it. Right, yeah, you can revert your own copy back to the if they blew up your .ps thing, so it's sure of that. Yeah, you always have to go make the copy of that. Actually, copy it. So yeah, you can accidentally blow away the file. It's no problem. Wherever you go to get from students, basically the new copy start and phone start running project so you do work in the machine. Then that copy now has the dot directory actually and then the code also. So right now, so right now, within the indication that's on the panel, that's all it's in and it is backed up. Don't worry about it going that certain I don't back up. You can't believe in if you want to tell what you want, but you need to change your code and you need to check that in, you have to get another copy, get a repository, and run that repository down to the local machine, put the code in there, put the code in that subject, and you push it back. And now you get that copy. That's what I'm doing in this class. It's going to be all about that. I don't care which company I'm working for, if I'm doing my own project. In some cases, we just web here. Doing it. So we have to find. Any questions? Right. You can also pay to get help from not doing it. I really want to. And I could also train my own version to get help on my own machine. Really much probably advanced work for future work that does, but it would be really good. And that's the other thing is that what's the process you think of, two different persons, with that. So we like to have two people sitting on the line, not connected to anything. One person has written some code, puts it in there, and creates it on local controls to run local repository. Puts it on the system. And tells the other guy, we're here connecting this IP address at this path. And you can synchronize the modify. And so they can do a jet and choose the copy. You don't actually have to do connected again. You jet. It can be done and you need to and you're cloning, you're literally making everything from the repository server to the copy. What is the clone on the view? That's how flexible it is. That's why any other questions? All right, here's the recommendation. I don't, I can't. So email me and I'll get it set. I don't have FTP installed. I don't have an FTPD running on the machine. I don't use it. I mean, I could do, SFTP, yeah. Yeah, I don't have, user accounts don't have passwords on it. But the passwords for the web interface, but my passwords for the actual Linux interface, so I gotta fix it. Which I can do. What am I doing? I'm going to go to here, and we're gonna mute the microphone.